Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. It is Wednesday, August 21st, 2024. This is a school board briefing, and the time is 1 p.m. Sergeant at Arms, has the front lobby been attended to? Yes. Thank you. The superintendent is unavailable and is in his seat. Please give a warm welcome to Deputy Superintendent Dr. Cupid McCoy. Thank you for being here. Just so the public is aware, board member Jordan is unable to attend due to a personal obligation, and board members Patrica and Giovanelli will try to participate by phone this afternoon. There are 7 items on the agenda. Number 1, we're going to go over student progression plan, including the secondary course catalog, briefing and first reading, job descriptions, SDLC classification and compensation study project update, capital plan philosophy, agenda review, public comment, and good of the order other business. Per board protocol, each board member should strive for 4 minutes for their initial comment and 2 minutes for a follow-up, with a total of 10 minutes during the duration of the discussion. So starting today, we are going to begin with the student progression plan, including secondary course catalog, briefing, and first reading, presented by Lori Houchin and Lori Brooks. Welcome.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to present our annual updates to our student progression plan and secondary course catalog. Okay, great. As you can likely recall from previous years, our student progression plan contains 3 sections. The first is the actual student progression plan, and the second and third sections articulate for our middle school and high schools the course catalog, which are the courses that the district has available from the Department of Education course catalog for our students to take advantage of and be scheduled into every year.
And then we have to make sure, there's a lot of departments that come together and a lot of people that come together to ensure that we are aligned to state statutes and state Board of Education rule, that we pay attention to any updates that the Department of Education has provided, that we are in alignment with the state course code directory, that there are actual courses that we are allowed to use in our district. And then of course it all has to be updated in our scheduling system so that our students can be scheduled to the correct courses. So the first update that we have is for elementary. So one of the things that we were waiting on last year was the official technical assistance paper for 3rd grade retention, because there were some updates. So if a student at the beginning of the year that's been retained as a 3rd grader on the state ELA PM1 scores a level 2 or above, then mid-year after November, if they can be moved forward, but they have to show demonstration of the skill in the month that they would go. So if they're in December, then they have to be up to the 4th grade skills of an ELA student for December, January, so forth, so on. So we were just waiting for that to happen. In years past, you've heard me talk about acceleration at the middle school level, and that we have accelerated courses, and it's a blending of, so like 6th grade accelerated is doing 6th grade standards with 7th grade standards, for example. So the acceleration courses actually begin in 3rd grade with 3rd grade math students. We launched it in middle school, but we were hoping that elementary would start launching these as well, so that as they progress through, there would be no gap in standards for students who were trying to achieve an algebra or geometry credit at the middle school level. So we're starting that this year with third grade math acceleration, and then that cohort will continue to be able to take accelerated courses. So in a couple years' time, we'll ensure that no students have a gap if they're on the accelerated math progression. And then in middle school, one of the things that principals have been asking us for quite some time is to move back to comprehensive science courses. Right now, 6th grade takes earth space, 7th grade life science, 8th grade physical science. The reason that they asked for it is because the certification became a challenge, and so we're having a hard time finding teachers. So there's a lot more allowable certifications, especially at the 6th grade comprehensive science, than there are in the other courses. Number one. Number two, we studied the data, and we were doing no better on the new progression than we were on comprehensive science. And I don't know if it's because just our students aren't doing better, or if it's because we've had a severe lack of teachers in science. So that, and so that usually plays out in 6th grade and 7th grade. 8th grade, they want to make sure they have the teachers there because that's the tested grade level, even though it's cumulative. So we have started that progression this year. So 6th grade, we've moved to comprehensive science, and then next year, 7th grade will move to comprehensive science, and then the following year, 8th grade will move to comprehensive science. And in that way, they haven't missed any curriculum by the time they get to high school, but will begin to alleviate that burden of having a lack of teachers in science.
Our high school updates. Some were a carryover from last year. As Lori Houchin indicated, there are times state statute passes, and then we receive additional details through the Department of Education and State Board of Education rule once we have a board-approved student progression plan and the school year is underway. And some items we have clear as a bell, and they're in this document. So last year, our students that entered grade 9 in 23, 24, and thereafter had some tweaks to their graduation requirements. There is now a half-credit requirement for personal financial literacy for our current freshmen and sophomores. And so we are offering courses per the Department of Education this year that meet that requirement. They released that memo, I believe in November or December of last school year, where they clearly articulated the courses that districts may offer to help students meet that requirement. So we're moving forward with that. And also for all cohorts of students, we have and have had a fine and practical arts credit requirement, 1 full credit in a fine or allowable practical art. And the Department of Education has said for all students now enrolled, it does not start just with one particular grade 9 entry. It's all currently enrolled students may meet that requirement with a fine art, a practical art, or a career and tech ed course, which, as you can imagine, has broadened that umbrella for our students tremendously. So that was an exciting change. We also made an update to the diploma seals, the gold and silver seals of biliteracy. We added an assessment as a district called the STAMP assessment, and that is for students that actually are newcomers to the United States that may have fluency in a world language, and it will allow them greater opportunity to demonstrate that fluency as a newcomer and therefore qualify potentially for the gold and or silver seal of biliteracy for their standard diploma. And that came through our ESOL department and our newer director, who had been using the STAMP 4S assessment in her previous district. And that was an example of conversations and broadened horizons where she had used this assessment and said this would be really good for our students. And we added that last school year, and now we're actually placing it into this year's student progression plan. And then this slide really is what I've already articulated, similar to or regarding the career and tech ed courses, that the legislative update happened and then we received guidance on not only the personal financial literacy option, but in January, halfway through the school year, we received actually technical assistance from the Department of Education on exactly what the CTE requirement and opportunities would look like. And those summarize our updates.
Thank you. Deputy Superintendent, do you have any comments?
Not at this time, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Before I move on, I want to make sure that you all know, Ms. Patrica, are you on the phone?
Yes, I'm here. I have no questions, but I very much appreciate the information and the update. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving along. Next is job descriptions presented by Angela Montemurano. Welcome this afternoon.
Good afternoon, members of the board, Deputy Superintendent, and School Board Attorney. As you received in your packets, we have one job description today that is being presented to you. This is an update to a current job description with some changes within it to align with our other directors. To give you some information, that's the Director of Transportation Services. At this time, that's the only one, so if there's any questions.
All right, thank you. Dr. Cuban-McCoy, do you have anything to add here?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Board members, any comments or questions about the job description? Ms. Patrica, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I'm actually going to stay here for the next one.
Okay. No problem. Next is the SDLC classification and compensation study project update. Please welcome Dr. Desamore along with Stacy Witchell, Evergreen Solutions Project Manager, and Allie Crumpler, Senior Consultant.
Good afternoon. Dr. Cuban-McCoy, members of the board. If you give us just a second to pull our presentation up. This. Okay, thank you so much. And we are happy to be here today to update the board, and this is pursuant to our compensation study, which, as you all know, was board approved on October 17th, back in 2023. A board approval of that project for the School District of Lee County to work hand in hand with Evergreen for a study of our compensation plans. And after board updates, weekly written board updates that we had given on December 1st, December 22nd, March 7th, and June 28th, we have made some significant progress, and we wanted to invite our partner in the project from Evergreen Solutions to come and give some very detailed information to the board as to the work that has happened so far and what our next steps would be. So I am really excited to introduce Ms. Stacy Witchell to you from Evergreen Solutions, who will go through our presentation, and then of course Angela and I will be here answering any other questions that you may have that's more SDLC related. So I will turn it over to Ms. Witchell.
Talking about this one? Okay. Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, I'm Stacy Witchell with Evergreen Solutions, a project manager with Evergreen, and we've been working with your project team here since November, I believe, on your class and comp study across all the different plans. We'll give you an overview today of what we've done so far, what we've done to date, overview of the assessment of current conditions, what we found, and then lead us on into talking specifically about SPALC. So, So I wanted to start really quick with what a classification and compensation study is. It's quite an undertaking. Organizations don't take them on lightly. They're a lot of work for the team as well, not just on our side. But this is done whenever an organization is really, there's challenges with recruiting and retaining quality staff. If you're looking at the market and you feel like you're drifting from the market, if you're looking to your organizational structure, your culture, and you want to make some improvements in that area, and then of course having a system that you can manage and maintain moving forward to really help you to develop and maintain a healthy budget, right? You want to have a system that helps support that need. Lee County Schools, the project goals for this was to look internally, look at your hierarchy internally, look at your internal equity across the different departments, across the different pay plans and classification levels. You want to make sure that classifications that are functioning at the same level in the organization are compensated comparably, right? So you want to make sure to address that. You want to look externally. You guys wanted to look at your peer organizations to determine where you fell in the market. You know, how competitive are you with that market? Are you leading in any areas? Are you at market? Are you lagging? So that was the external equity that we were looking at. And then ultimately that final goal was to give recommendations for a compensation and classification plan that's it's adaptable, it fits your needs, and after 25 plus years on the public sector side myself, it's financially feasible. I want to make sure that it's a plan that can grow with you and be adaptive and fiscally sustainable. So like I said, we began the study back in November. That was our kickoff. That was our initial data collection. You know, no good study can start without data. So we collected your employee database. We looked at your salary schedules, your different pay plans, your job descriptions, all the information that we need to really understand what you have in place right now, how you're using it, and really kind of dig in and figure out what are the strengths and weaknesses of your current system. So we'll lead into assessment of current conditions. So we looked at your assessment of current conditions. I'll flip my note page over real quick. We looked at your assessment of current conditions. The focus here that we're going to look at is what you currently call your administrative plan, your end schedule, and then SPALC. And we did look at TALC too. I don't want you to think that, it's just not where we're at today. But we looked at all your different plans, looked at the structure of them, looked how they're designed and how you're utilizing them. You're using a combination of a couple of different things right now. Many of your classifications are on what we call an open range system. So there's a defined minimum, midpoint, and max. And employees fall somewhere within that minimum to max scale, depending on a variety of factors. And then you're also using what you call a market rate here locally, and it's a flat rate. And that rate was established several years ago. And it was set for various reasons, but it's a flat rate for many of those classifications that are in SPALC right now, primarily in SPALC, and those are flat rates. They don't drift off of that level. You've also got, in those plans, some consistency in your range spreads. When you look at the admin plan, the end plan, they're roughly consistent in what we call the range spread. That's the distance between minimum to maximum. The admin range spread is 18%. And that's from minimum to maximum, there's only that much room. N is 60%, and SPALC averages 44%, but it does vary from 23 to 51%. So there's a little more variation in that schedule. And to compare to what we would call best practice really for school districts, typically somewhere between 40 to 60%. And so that kind of gives you an idea of how those compare to the others. Your grade progressions there, and that's the distance between the grades, is also, it's 7% for most areas, and it's for N it's 9%. And then for your salary distribution, and looking at your employees there, you had approximately 72% of your employees are below the midpoint of their current range. Now, of course, that only applies to the about 1,100 that are on a range, right? The rest of them are flat rates. But that's a significant number of your employees that are below midpoint. When you look at overall, 34%, grab my numbers really quick here, sorry about that. 30% of the market rate employees are paid at a rate that's slightly different from that set market rate. Primarily that's due to, that's the salaries when people were grandfathered into that position. When I spoke a second ago, I talked about the distribution of your employees and where they fell within that pay range. This just kind of gives you a graphic representation of that. And you can see in quartile 1, over 50% of your employees are sitting in quartile 1. The average tenure of your folks in quartile 1 is a little over 8 years. Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea of where they're at. So when we look at that on this side, I'm looking at quartile 1 and 2, which is 8 years and then almost 14 years of time total with the district. There's a fair bit of compression right there. It tells me people aren't moving as much as we would probably anticipate they would be. When we compared compression, and compression, again, we're talking about salaries and how close they are to each other. So when I'm talking about basis on time, what that's telling me is I've got somebody that's been here, 4 or 5 years, not paid very differently from somebody that's been here 10 years, 15 years, right? This compression is looking at supervisor to employee. And as you can see here, that's not an area of compression that you have. That green, that tells me I've got at least about 20% distance between supervisors and their direct reports, which is good. That's what you want. You want to have that one separation in the role responsibility, the risk that supervisor is carrying. And you also want incentive for people to want to grow and professionally develop into those other positions. So you're doing really good there. So following that assessment of current conditions, your significant findings, again, that compression based on time, and then inconsistency in those schedules, and then those market rates. Let's see if we can find a different way to approach those in the solution. Following that, we did employee outreach in December. 4 of us actually came down and met with a cross-section of your employees, multiple different locations and days, hit all the different departments, multiple different levels. Got a lot of really good input from your folks as far as what they feel like is working well for them, what isn't, what is their areas of concerns. One of the first questions we always ask folks is what brought you here? Why did you want to come to the district? And, no surprise, I'll touch on those in just a minute. But we, on top of the focus groups, we also did a survey to all employees because we wanted to reach out broader than just the focus groups. And so we did survey everybody, and we got about 3,300 responses from your employees. And those were all anonymous, by the way. So we asked those folks why here, why come build your careers here at the district. By and large, it was location. A lot of folks are from the area. Kids, when you're working in K-12, I did years ago, it's the kids. You're in there because you want to be part of that community, support them, and make a difference in those kids' lives. No difference here. People really enjoy the opportunity to make a positive impact. It's the type of work they're doing, the hours, the schedule, the benefits, and that's with local government, that's always a draw on is the benefits that are offered. And then coworkers in the district leadership. There was a lot of positive comments about the leadership team that you guys have built here, especially recently, and how valued your folks really view them. When we asked them about a few of the other areas where there is some areas of concern in regards to compensation, about 11% of the participants really didn't have an understanding of how the system currently worked, right? They didn't understand how is somebody placed, why are they on this versus that. That's not uncommon, and it really was only about 11%, so that's not so bad. There was average satisfaction level for base compensation, so that was 3.2 on a 10-point scale. 74% of the participants felt that the raises, incentives, pay grade assignments, they weren't fair, they weren't equally distributed between employees. Again, a lot of that also has to do with the understanding how it works. Employees felt the salaries were not keeping up with local cost of living. And then a lot of concern in regards to compression, a lot from your market rate folks. That's where a lot of that concern came from. When we asked them about, okay, well, what can the district do to be more competitive within the market? And not much of a surprise here, adjust the salaries, adjust the pay plans so they're more competitive and they can keep up with the market. So that was primarily the biggest feedback that we got. We talked about classification concerns. There was some feedback that some people felt that they were very generic in nature. Some people like their job descriptions to be incredibly specific, and other people like them to be very, very broad. Some people felt like they weren't detailed enough to really cover all the things that they do. The job descriptions, they felt like they were outdated. needed to be updated. Not enough career progression in certain areas. They wanted some more opportunities for growth. And then some inconsistency regarding contracted time for some of the employees. Is it a 10-month, an 11-month, a 12-month position, and how is that determined? So the big three issues based on employee feedback, they want to be competitive with the market peers. They want salary schedules that help you retain and attract quality staff. They want to adjust compensation and pay to account for the local cost of living. They feel like it needs to be adjusted for South Florida, for Lee County. And then accurately align the pay within the district according to those job functions. So make sure the role, responsibility, the risk of the job is aligned appropriately and assigned to the right pay grade. Now, the next thing that we did was what we call the job assessment tool. The job assessment tool is part of our outreach, is part of us understanding your current classification system, and also getting employees' input on what they do versus what their job description says they do. And so we administered this to all of your employees. Everybody had an opportunity to respond. It was done electronically. And not only do we ask employees to do, after the employees are done, we ask supervisors to take a look. Is there anything that the employees forgot? A lot of times we're looking at what we have right now, right here in front of us, and we're not looking at what we do on a cyclical nature. Maybe every April you do this, right? If it's not April right there when you're when you're doing the JET, you may not be thinking about it. But that way supervisors can give input on what they do. That gives us an opportunity to create a hierarchy of all your classifications. And then when we do that, we share it back with the project team to say, okay, let's come back in and look at it and look at how the hierarchy is structured here based on this input, based on the job descriptions, and then we can make adjustments as needed. So that was the internal side. Looking externally, this is the market survey. So these were the targets or the peers that we identified to collect the data from. That's a collaborative process. We're not doing that by ourselves. We work together on determining which organizations made sense for you guys. And we're looking at that from proximity. I'm looking at size of the districts. I'm looking at I want to make sure they're comparable from an enrollment number as well. So it's your size, your services offered, your proximity, who are you competing with here locally, and then broader, what are some of the other districts doing that are of comparable size? So that these are the ones that we were able to collect data from. You can see the list there. You'll also notice that these districts are not all sitting right here on top of you, or cities and counties. Some of them are a little bit further away, and so we adjust everything for cost of living. Everything is brought to the value of your dollar here. We used 196 year classifications as benchmarks that represented all different departments, classification levels, types of work. And based on using that information and then using the other internal information we have, we're able to do a regression analysis later on. So 196 benchmarks gives us a good view across the entire district and types of work that has been done. I need to update that. It says over 700 data points. We actually had collected some more since that. It's a little bit closer to 1,000. So we had a lot of good quality data points. And what I mean by that is we're matching on the functions and the operations, those essential skills of those positions. Title to title in your own district varies. So you can imagine how much drift you have from one district to another. So we want to make sure the essential skills line up. They're never going to be a one-to-one, but we're looking at about a 70% match. And the type of work they do, the level of work they do, does it supervise, does it not supervise, does it require a bachelor's or a master's, does this one not? And so we want to make sure we're lining them up based on those things as well. We finalized this back in April, and we did this at the 50th percentile. We actually calculated your numbers for you at multiple percentages. We did the 40th percentile, 50th, 60th, and eased on up into 70th as well. But 50th percentile is where we're looking at to help you align with that kind of top of the bell curve market average. So that means we're looking at 50% of folks are below you and 50% are above you. So you're really kind of sitting at the peak of that bell curve, okay? And from a public sector standpoint, that's a good place to be. And again, adjusted for cost of living. And what you'll see here when we looked at this, on average across all 196 of those benchmarks, you were just below the minimum at the market minimums, right? So the minimum of those salary ranges, you came in just below minimums. At the midpoint, you'll see that you fell behind at 4.7% at midpoint. And then at the maximum, still holding steady at about 4% behind maximum. And one of the reasons why is because all those market rate positions you have, all of those are only compared at that midpoint position, because that's how they were established originally. So we maintain them at that point. But what that tells us is you're running about 5% behind market on average with your current pay plans. So that gives us a starting place to look at what adjustments will need to be made. And then also your average range spread, remember the distance min to max across all of them, on average are slightly wider than some of your peers. They ran between 45 and 50, you're sitting closer to 50. And what else on this slide? I think that's it. That's the 50th percentile. So that would make you at that market competitive standpoint. So one thing I do want to mention too at the market survey is when we broke that apart a little bit and looked at some of the different groups, while 5% on average is where you were behind across all of the levels and plans, you were 10% and greater behind in certain areas, right? That's an average, so some are ahead and some are below. The areas that you were the furthest behind, really no surprise, it's maintenance, your trades, those are behind. Some of your specialist positions were behind at a greater than a 10% market position. So whenever you're making adjustments, and this is something we take into with salary considerations, it doesn't mean you just take everything and move everything 5%, right? First, we want to build the structure that's going to support your needs, and then we come and break down and start looking at classifications and pay grade assignments. And then I'm looking at market, I'm looking at your structural need, I'm looking at areas that are of critical concern. All those things play into where do you assign positions to pay grades. It's not just one factor by itself. A position that's 10, 15, 20% behind a market, you're never going to fix that with just a 5% pay adjustment. So for salary plan considerations, we did want to make sure we created pay plans for you that were consistent in terms of range, spreads, and grade progressions. We want a system that progresses through in a way that's intuitive and easy to explain. We want to allow for flexibility to meet future needs with consideration for fiscal sustainability, of course. And then base plans at the 50th percentile. And again, we're looking at about a 5% adjustment to the plan, okay? And then, of course, the structure. I'm going to give you pay ranges for all the classifications that are currently on a market rate. So I'm going to take all those market rate classifications and assign them to a pay grade. So now they have an earning potential from minimum to maximum across the range and across the system. I'm going to crosswalk all the classifications to the appropriate pay grade based on level of work they do. I call it my R cube. It's the role, responsibility, risk of the position. Make sure we align them appropriately and internally that there's equity there. And then estimate employee placement within their pay range based on both current salary and range of tenure. And then we want to allow for future movement with the plans to be based on performance. So we want to get you a new baseline, get everybody transitioned over, and then let you build a plan where you can utilize performance measures moving forward.
And if I can preface now, what's coming up next is based on all of this information that you just heard. Now we're going to talk a little bit about specific scenarios, specifically with SPALC, because that's where we've been doing the most work to this point in time, as you know, because we are in negotiations at this time. So the information that you're seeing here next has also been presented to SPALC in bargaining during that time.
So here's a proposed SPALC pay plan. And so where before you had about 8 to 10 pay grades that you were using for the SPALC positions that were on an open range system. We expanded that to 15 because we want to be able to accommodate all your classification types, all those market rate positions. Want to create enough room in this system to allow for the career progression and growth, make sure people can grow in their chosen careers. We want to make sure we don't inadvertently create any compression between levels. So as positions increase in their role and their complexity, we want to provide enough room in between them so that complexity can be valued. We mentioned earlier on that best practice range spread for many school districts is 40 to 60%. So we're recommending a range spread here of 50%. That puts you right in the middle. And so that's the distance between minimum to maximum. Your midpoint progression that's the distance between each successive pay grade. So there's 6% between each pay grade. So as you move from pay grade 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 6% between each one of them. That allows you to have a level 1 and then a level 2 employee as they kind of go through their career family they've got that room to grow. When we looked at different options on how to crosswalk folks over into this new strategy, and this is, now you've moved them over, but now where do you place them, right? That becomes this next question. And we always run this first scenario. It's called bring to new minimum. This is where you look at an employee's current salary, look at the pay grade they're assigned to. If they're making above that new minimum, then there's no change. That's where they would stay. If they're making below the new minimums, then you're going to bring them up to that new minimum. So this will be the way that, this is built into every option that we run anyway, but this would allow everybody to be on the new pay plans. So that's the benefit. The negative side of doing this is it's going to compound compression. Okay, because I haven't moved anybody, I haven't valued them based on time or tenure, performance, anything, right? I've just placed them all on this pay grade. So if they were compressed, they're probably more compressed right now. Okay, but a lot of districts or even cities and counties will do this. Oftentimes they'll do this in year one. Year one, they get everybody onto the new pay plan, and then year two, they use a strategy to help address, whatever it is. They want to look at range placements, compression issues. There's different things that we can help them take a look at. But that's not an uncommon option just for year one. For this next one, when we looked at this minimum or multi-year date factor, what we looked at here was the range of time your employees have been here. And we wanted to value that time without pushing people all the way to the end of that pay schedule. So we established ranges of years. So if you were, I think it was within 1-2 years of being here at the district, you maintained that bring to minimum position. But as you kind of progress through in the next ranges, 2 to 7, 7 to 14, we can't remember right off where we landed, but where those breaks in time were, we adjusted you an additional couple percentages to move you into that pay range. So that way it does help address the compression based on time, but we're not really inflating positions, okay? Especially when you're looking at time based on time with the organization. We really want to be careful of that because people have promoted over time, they change jobs over time. And when I'm looking at hire dates, you can inflate a position very carefully if you're not careful, because it won't take those moves into account. So, dollars. So, when we're looking at budget estimates here, that first table, if I draw your attention to that one, that first line there says bring to new minimum, and we're looking at SPALC only in that first table. So if all you were going to do is bring to new minimum, you're impacting 4,375 individuals for that average adjustment, so some a little bit more, some a little bit less, but it's not an insignificant amount of money, $3.6 million. And then if you look at applying that date factor, then that's going to increase you to just over $6 million. But that's going to help you spread people out based on some time to address some of that compression. And that would give you a new baseline to move forward from. Now, if you, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, if I could point out that the $6.1 million that you see under that column is, as the note says on the bottom, it's just the adjustment of the salary only. When you add in both the Social Security and the retirement costs associated with, that brings that cost to about $7.2 million, which is part of what we discussed as being the bargaining authority for this year. So in this particular plan, that is the bargaining authority based on those parameters.
And that one, it is an average of about a 5% adjustment if you look at that one too. And again, some a little bit more, some a little bit less. Now, we're not done, so don't hold me to this number down here. But if we took with where we're at right now with looking at SPALC and look at the classifieds, which is what you guys call in and support there, and the admin, and applied that same methodology to it, that $11 million tag there is an estimate of what that would be. Now, we're not quite done with those yet, but I wanted to go ahead and give you an estimate so you keep all of them in mind. And notice TALC's not listed there. That's the last group that we're going to work with. Now, these recommendations really apply to, as we wrap up the study in general, but I want to go ahead and just share them with you, so you can be thinking about this moving forward. on the public sector side, well, even private sector side for that word, your documents are only as good as you keep them current and updated. So you want to always review and revise as appropriate your pay practices, your policies, your pay plans, so they do maintain relevancy for you. And you want to make sure you make any adjustments as needed for if you have an area where all of a sudden you're realizing we can't hire anybody at this level. Take a close look at it, do an annual check. And if you're doing those small-scale surveys along the way on an annual basis, and you've got a great team here now that can help you do that, that will keep that from getting away from you. And then if you're doing it on an annual basis, it's really only 3, 5, probably 5 years, honestly, to have to do a full comprehensive again. And then next steps, obviously we are going to continue working on the admin and the end schedule, and then TALC. But then we'll provide data for the job description updates. I know that's something that's an ongoing project. And we'll collaborate with HR on plan management strategies for the tools that we'll also leave with them. And then initiate discussions on creation and implementation of a performance review system. That's part of this project. So when we get done with this part of it, we're going to have discussions on that. And then consider differentiation of positions based on level and or assignment. That'll be part of the overall strategies for how you implement things moving forward. And then help you make sure do we have career paths? We heard that from your folks. Did we leave you with a plan that supports that? Update the data for the job descriptions, and then review FLSA status. We're more than happy to help review that because we all know that's changing here now, and a full implementation come January. So any help we can provide there too, we're here for. And then we're here for the next year anyway for any technical support.
And those next steps really do underline the conversation that we've had from the beginning in terms of the length of time, the fact that this really is a multi-step, multi-year process, and how would that look? That we wouldn't necessarily be exactly where we wanted to be in one fell swoop, but as was kind of discussed here, first step being creating those new pay structures to be more competitive based on the market, moving everyone to those pay structures, taking into account different pieces of information related to the different salary schedules, such as time and service. There may be, as we discussed today, but there may be other things as well because each salary schedule is very unique. So the plan that we discussed today was really very specific based on the information that had been found through the study for Spout. And then on a phase 2, doing all of these things that that are listed here in terms of how we create more of a differentiated pay schedule or differentiated jobs based on what the assignment is or what level of complexity may be even inside of the same job description. And then also creating a tight performance review structure, in which case then performance pay, more pay differentiation could be based upon that, as well as continuing to update job descriptions and making sure we're refining for things like not just the FLSA status or the Fair Labor Standards Act, an exempt versus a non-exempt position, but also ensuring that our job descriptions are in alignment with what the job responsibility actually is, and that those pay grades are continually assessed, and that there's not only equity to the market, but also internal equity, those positions related to each other. And so very much a multi-year process, and I appreciate Ms. Witchell being able to come here today to share all of this information with the board and the public based on everything that has been happening in the compensation study. We know that people are ready to hear what's going on and kind of what that means for every individual. So we'll step back and wait for any board member questions that you may have.
Thank you. I'll ask Dr. Cupid-McCoy if she would like to add anything at this time.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to say thank you to the team, as this is an extraordinarily complex project with multiple moving parts, with just attention to detail that's needed to execute the work efficiently doesn't go unnoticed. So thank you, and I know that the board is looking forward to the continued phases so that they are in a position to direct the superintendent to make some informed decisions. So again, thank you.
Thank you. Any more board comments or questions at this time? Mr. Fisher?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the data. This was obviously very comprehensive, and I appreciate it. This question is for Ms., is it Witchell?
It's Witchell.
Okay, sorry, I just want to make sure I get that right. For the 16 peer districts, has your company ever done any work for any of those 16 ones?
Let me pull that list back up real quick.
Okay.
Gotcha. Right there.
And fix my glasses. All right. Yes. Yes, we have. We've done work with a handful of them up there.
Okay. The general question I have, and not necessarily for now, is just, when that work was done, kind of how did it, what progressions they made? I'd be curious to see kind of where they start at with all of you and then where they ended up. I don't know if it's 6 months, a year ago, year or two, however long it was. I'd be kind of interested in seeing some of that data, if that's possible, at least for some of those districts, to see, based on what you guys kind of suggested, how they work through that plan.
How they work through it. Yeah, that's something I can provide to you afterwards, if you'd like to see some of that information. There's a couple of them, it was for negotiation purposes, and it was data they wanted to go into negotiations with. And then on some of the other municipalities, those plans have been fully implemented. Charlotte County is one of them. They fully implemented what we proposed and moved forward with and made, I think they made all their changes actually in 1 year. The other ones have been more informative in nature from a school district standpoint for the recent. I'm not going, we've done other ones that have been, those are dated though. For some of them, they've been more informative in nature to go into negotiations with, and help to develop performance plans as well. But I've got a couple up there, just looking at that list, that there's some things that I can provide back. Absolutely.
Yeah, just kind of wanted to see the before and after, as long as the board or deputy superintendent doesn't object to that.
Okay, absolutely.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Morgan?
Well, this is fascinating, and thank you. I'm assuming that you, Mrs. Montemurano, are confident that Evergreen has covered all of the bases that you expected to be covered as you grow your department and, try to create a level of expertise with respect to performance and pay? Yeah. I think the most interesting thing, that the biggest challenge here is going to be create and implement a performance review system. If you have a good review system, then people know how they're being paid and why they're being paid, what they're being paid. Performance review is really, really, really hard in a system like this. It's really hard to say to people, performance review is considered essentially derogatory. You're not performing. Instead of, this is what you can do to take the next step. And I don't know how you change that culture of, they're going to evaluate me and I'm not going to get all 10 out of 10 in every area. They're only giving me 6 in this area. That says I'm not doing my job. No, that's not what it says. It says that there's more learning that needs to take place. And the goal in getting all 10s is really to step to the next level. And all of the other scores within your, until you get there, are really reflective of the growth that needs to take place in that position. And that growth should be reflected in your compensation, and your manager should be able to have a conversation with you about that. So I think you've done an awesome job. But I think to get over or to get past the qualitative judgments about my salary, my position, et cetera. We really have to change the culture about how people are evaluated and link it to this, if it's going to be meaningful. So those are my comments. Thank you.
May I comment on that?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. I do want to add to what you said. I think it's important of two different pieces. One is on the culture, and that is something that my team, the entire HR team, we are working on that. We've been building a structure. We actually just had a meeting this morning talking about culture and what's our next steps. So that's a mission of mine to take on that. You mentioned the performance evaluation system. That also is something that we are looking at. And this project, what Stacy's talked about, there's multiple steps to this project. This is not we're here today and we're said and done. It also takes a village to do this. And I just want to highlight, our Director of HR Operations, Tara White, is here with us today, as well as Kirsten Thompson, who's our Assistant Director of Compensation, who has put in many hours and timeless work with Amy Desamore and the team behind her of the compensation analysts. And Suzette Rivera, our executive director, is here too. I mean, we wouldn't be able to do this without the support of Evergreen and the support of having the board's support and to allow me to have that team in compensation to be able to do this work as well as to do the next phases of it. The job descriptions, there's a lot more work to come here, and I'm really confident with the team that we have that we're going to be able to provide that for you and the employees of the district. Thank you.
I'll ask if Ms. Patrica has anything.
Hi, yes, thank you. I have three things. Well, first, four things. Very appreciative of the study, have been sort of anxiously awaiting it. And I'm grateful to have the presentation done as it was today. If we could go to slide 9, I believe that this is a good opportunity for us to help the public and more specifically our employees understand that supplement is not the right word. The amount of money a coach gets paid, what is that called?
That's a supplement. She's thinking of supplement.
Oh, a supplement. All right, thank you. Supplements are bargainable. So it's not like the school board or the superintendent sits down and decides we're going to give all coaches a 10% raise across the board next year. That is something that's bargained during TALC negotiations. I think that sometimes the public doesn't understand that. That's my first comment. Second comment is slide 18, and this kind of dovetails into what Ms. Morgan was talking about. There was some discussion amongst the presenters about the second stage of wage increases being tied to the amount of time an employee is with the district. That gives me some concern because amount of time is one thing and some institutional knowledge is certainly gained the longer you're with the district. However, amount of time at the district does not equal excellence in performance by the employee. And in fact, awarding longevity can often lead to a lack of productivity by junior employees who are performing at the highest levels, perhaps outperforming their more senior counterparts. So I'd like to hear what your ideas are with regard to not just awarding longevity, but actually awarding performance.
Respond to this. Okay.
Yeah, I guess I'll just say, yes, understood. And a lot of the same conversations we have had amongst ourselves. Part of the reason why we talked about utilizing something related to time, or what's called here the minimum year data factor, is very much because of the compression that we talked about a little bit earlier, that there is some expectation, logically, that there would be some differentiation of pay between people who have been here shorter time versus a longer period of time, which is one of the rubs that came out in the survey information related to market rate and some of the feedback that employees were giving. At the same time, we very much do want to, base compensation on performance as well, which is kind of what we talked about in phase 2. But the reason that it is in phase 2 is because first, before you base compensation on performance, we must ensure that we've got a very objective way in order to measure that and report out on that. And so from an HR perspective, I think we felt we had some work to do on the performance evaluation system itself, and then would be in a better position to be able to base some level of compensation on that performance evaluation. And I'm sure that Ms. Witcher wants to add to that.
Oh, it's off again. So I completely agree with what she said there. I think the challenge there was to be able to address what you have right now. 80% of your employees are paid within quartile 1 and 2. Over 50% of those are in quartile 1. And so recognizing there is a level of compression and there is value in time. However, I am a big proponent of time, and time alone does not tell you about the quality and the contributions of the employee. But we wanted to give you a baseline to start from, recognizing that compression, but not exaggerating position based on time alone. So that's why we went with date ranges and then small percentage increments based on those ranges of time. We did not want to take, didn't want to take a 30-year employee and put him at the maximum. We didn't want to take a 15-year employee and assume proficiency and place him at a midpoint. So by taking date ranges and at a percent increments, it allows us to address some of that compression, but not in such a way that it hampers your future goals of the performance system.
Excellent, thank you. And then my final question is this. Do y'all remember when our employees' pay was published in the news press? After that, I had several employees approach me and they were distraught. One story was, I have been doing this job for 17 years and somebody who was hired 2 years ago to do the same job is making more than me. And what I said to those employees at that time was, please tie a knot and hang on. Evergreen is coming in, we're doing a study, and we are going to address the disparities that we're seeing across every level of employee. So my question for you all is, when can I tell those employees that relief is on the way, please?
I think we can tell those employees that relief is on the way when we're able to create the new salary structures, successfully negotiate them, of course, if it's negotiated, get them board approved, and then implement them, which is exactly what this work is, and also exactly why we knew in a solution there has to be a consideration made to time in service based on the scenario that you just gave. There is an expectation of people that that there is some differentiation there, and there is dissatisfaction related to what some of those perceived inequities look like right now, which is why we're taking into consideration that time. And so that is the goal, is to be able to rectify that in this round, and maybe not completely for every employee, because it might be a multi-step, multi-year process, but certainly it is the expectation that in the solutions that we're putting forward for this year, that we're making strides to resolving the issue that you're referring to.
Okay, I heard this year, so that was really the only time frame that I heard in that answer. So sorry to push a little bit, but
I said a lot.
Yes, you did, but without giving me anything that I can really hang my hat on or share with employees who have expressed concerns.
Well, I tried to. I'll try again. So yes, it would be the intention that this year, in the employee increases that would be getting put into effect this year with the bargaining authority we have this year, that we make strides into correcting the issue. It may not be fully corrected to everyone's satisfaction or what they would have expected to see. That might take some additional periods of time, but it certainly is the expectation that in this year, some progress would be made towards fixing that issue.
Excellent. That's a much clearer answer. I appreciate that. And may I assume that means admin and salary N as well?
It does, yes.
Perfect. Those are my questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ms. Patrica. Anyone else? Mr. Fisher?
Thank you. One question, it's probably broad, and I enjoyed reading some of the data, the feedback from the employees, and one of the things that you guys briefly talked about was career progression, and I think it talks about 50% of survey respondents saying that, hey, there's not enough opportunity for advancement within the district. I mean, that's pretty common, among most jobs and most industries. My question is, how do you do that? How do you balance, for example, you talk about making more tiers. How do you balance that? Obviously, I mean, you talked about longevity, skill, abilities. How do you balance that without just making tiers to make tiers or positions?
Agreed. And most organizations, you do not need more than 6 levels from entry to all the way to the top. At that point, you're creating levels to create levels, and you can't differentiate or distinguish a 2 from a 3 from a 4. So what I would say there is we want to make sure that you've got enough levels that meet the needs of the district, and what the district needs itself, to get the job done effectively and efficiently, while also balancing that with the needs of the employees. I would say you can do an entry level, a level 1 or 2, frontline supervisor, your manager, and up. And if we can create that kind of, for the most part, consistent structure and allow room for it as you change, then that'll fit that need. I don't think, there's some folks that I talk to that would like, well, in 2 years I want to increase the level. Nothing's changed in what they're doing, right? They're at the same level, they're doing the same type of work, no more certifications, no education or training. So time and time by itself should not be that only factor that determines how do you distinguish your levels. And so, but that's what we're looking at, because I would never want to propose to you guys any career family needs 8, 9, 10 levels. That would not be effective.
Mr. Persons?
I understand the levels and how y'all are progressing them at a certain percentage. I just worry, cost of living come into those anywhere, or how does that overall, once you settle on something, would it be each step would be at X amount of percentage plus like cost of living or something? I mean, I've worked in private and public, I know when I was for the city of Fort Myers working, we had a salary range, did a similar study, and now we're talking several years ago, like 20 years ago. But they came up and they agreed on that, and then every year everybody received a cost of living plus a performance pay. And that sort of moved them up the scale. So here it sort of looks like they're really, I just don't see a cost of living built in here. It looks like you get like you say, a step pay, and then we're talking about maybe performance. But if you had a 9% inflation or something like that, is that going to be a total differently negotiation or something, or? I just worry about the union pushing back, that's all.
Yeah, that is a negotiation. So say, for example, this is what we're talking about today is just the transition, right, to a new salary structure, salary schedule, if you can still hear me. The transition to that and what the transition looks like, right? But going forward in the future, depending on how a salary increase is structured, it may very well be structured like, well, everyone, there's a cost of living increase, and then in addition to that, there's something else related to some type of performance pay measure. So yet to be determined, but in each year, that is would be very much specifically negotiated. And I think generally it would be the intention to do some kind of cost of living increase, not only in, say, an annual increase, but also related to the evaluation of the pay structures over a period of time.
Okay, I just wanted the public to know that that would be built in addition to the millions we're talking about here. It's just to get everybody back to where they should be.
Any other comments, questions? Some of the things that were top of mind have already been answered. Thank you for breaking this down. I think the key here is not just to provide this to the board, but for the public to hear and for our employees to hear. These discussions are being had, and hopefully headway is going to be made very soon. I thought it was interesting that Ms. Patrica brought up coach supplements. I know all of our employees are, they all are very important, and I value what they do. But it was interesting that you brought that up, because I've visited 3 high schools since school started and had a sit-down discussion with administration, and the thing that they say, the job they are saying that is the hardest to fill right now is to finding coaches and assistant coaches. And a lot of it has to do with the amount of pay. I mean, let's face it, a lot of coaches are working after hours, and many of our coaches are volunteers. We only have so many supplements per coaching position, so a lot of the coaches are out there on their own hours, and then you've got the others that are working for a $1,200 stipend, and they're there 5 days a week for 3 hours, and then on a Friday night or a Tuesday night for a game, and then traveling clear across the state. So it was interesting that Ms. Patrica brought that up, because I've heard it 3 times since school's only been in session for 5. Are we on day 5? day 8. And then I do agree with the scoring piece. Even as a former educator, we've got some amazing teachers who have been here for 20, 30 years that have given back so much to the community. And then we've got brand new teachers that leave college and are so on fire, ready to get into a classroom, and spending 2 or 3 hours, you're having to ask them to please leave for the nights you can lock up. But I think it's a very important point that was made earlier, is just because someone's been here long doesn't necessarily mean the performance is where maybe it needs to be. So, and that goes across that for me is across the board. But if there's nothing else, thank you so much for the clarity and breaking this down. I know for me it was very easy to understand, so I appreciate the basic descriptions and breaking it down, and thank you to the rest of the team.
Thank you.
We're going to move on now to the capital plan philosophy. We'd like to welcome Frederick Ross and Dr. Adam Malloy to present to us on this today.
Good afternoon to the board members, Deputy Superintendent Cupid McCoy, Attorney Debris Bruno, My name is Frederick Ross, Executive Director of Facility Operations. I'm here with our Director of Planning, Dr. Adam Malloy, and to talk about the topic of our capital plan philosophy, a question that we received. So we wanted to come and present, give some information kind of about the process that we go through and our priorities and goals in that capital planning process, and field any questions that you may have. So as one of Florida's fastest growing areas, Lee County is facing challenges of the district rather, is facing challenges of balancing our rapid population growth with the need for educational infrastructure. Our capital plan right now we feel is a living document, and is designed to adapt these demands and stay ahead of the growth. Our objectives are clear. We attempt to establish a framework to effectively manage the growth, enhance and maintain the district's infrastructure, optimize resource allocation, and promote sustainable development. These guiding principles ensure we strategically invest in facilities that support our students and align with our district needs. This philosophy shapes every decision we make as we work to provide high-quality educational facilities for every student. Thank you for the opportunity to present this capital philosophy, and we'll dive into the next slide with our agenda. We're looking to cover the philosophy that underpins this capital plan, the goals and processes guiding the development of the plan, identify key priorities, highlight the frequency and the critical and crucial feedback loops, and conclude with a discussion on capital discipline, an essential feature that serves as the guiding principle in our approach to our 5- and 10-year plans. Our capital plan philosophy emphasizes creating a safe, innovative, and adaptable learning environment that supports educational excellence while again addressing the district's growth. Strategic planning capital investments are aligned with our commitment to accommodate Lee County's expanding student population. By proactively investing in our facility infrastructure, we hope to ensure that students have equitable access to high-quality resources. This approach not only enhances the educational experience, but also for us, it fosters the overall student development while meeting the evolving needs of the community as well. The district's capital plan is built on several key principles. First and foremost, our approach, again, is driven by that district's dynamic growth, both current and projected. With an annual increase of over 1,300 students, a 10-year compound growth rate of 1.61%, our plan not only addresses immediate needs, but also anticipates growth over the next 5 to 10 years. This requires strategic investments in new seats and critical infrastructure to ensure that all students have access to quality learning environments. The growth and scalability were the focus of our past 4 capital plan presentations, emphasizing the need for more seats and to accommodate the expanding community. The remaining principles that guide our capital strategy shape our decision-making. Capital discipline determines how we allocate resources for our new schools, for our renovation projects, and for our ongoing maintenance. We prioritize student-centered school designs that enhance the learning environment, integrate essential safety and security measures, and ensure long-term sustainability through modern and innovative practices. And lastly, our community involvement is vital. By collaborating with our major community stakeholders, we ensure our capital plan aligns with the needs of and the priorities of, again, that growing community around us. Our strategic goals focus on optimizing the use and the development of our facilities to meet the demand, again, I keep saying it, of this growing community. We regularly assess our facilities. We want to prioritize and guide our capital investments and make data-driven decisions. Our long-term improvement plans aligns with the district goals and remain flexible to adapt to emerging challenges. Financial responsibility and discipline are key. We seek to balance funding sources to ensure sustainable investments that provide maximum value to the district and to the taxpayers. We engage with our top professionals to ensure high quality, timely construction, quality work and renovations that meet our standards. And we invest in the learning environment. That's the classrooms, the laboratories, the libraries, our recreation facilities and fields that all go to supporting the student well-being and community use. Technology integration is also essential nowadays with the changing technologies to ensure a robust infrastructure for digital learning and future needs. And finally, we provide proactive upkeep for our facilities to try to extend that useful life and ensure that they remain in top condition. From there, I will turn this over to Dr. Malloy, who will begin to talk a little bit about the capital planning process.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's the same. Thank you, Mr. Ross. Let's take a closer look at the key steps in developing the School District of Lee County's capital plan. We begin with a comprehensive needs assessment, leveraging Davis Demographics' yearly student projections to forecast enrollment trends and identify areas where additional capacity is needed. This process includes evaluating the condition of existing facilities, collecting feedback from schools, and identifying critical areas for expansion, renovation, or new construction. Next, we prioritize these needs by focusing on projects that address safety, capacity, and instructional improvements. A key aspect of this stage is the new facility modification process, which allows us to systematically review requests from schools for enhancements, ensuring that they align with district-wide goals and growth demands. This structured approach helps us balance immediate needs with long-term objectives. After prioritizing projects, we conduct feasibility studies to assess potential solutions. We evaluate factors like site conditions, costs, timelines, ensuring that the selected projects are both practical and achievable within the constraints of our budget and resources. With our assessments and feasibility analysis completed, we develop the formal capital plan. This plan outlines the scope, timeline, and budget for each project, aligning with our district's strategic goals and educational vision for the future. In collaboration with district leadership through the Capital Committee, we create a funding strategy. This involves determining the best mix of funding pathways to sustainably finance our projects while maximizing value for taxpayers. The Capital Committee plays a critical role in guiding resource allocation decisions to ensure alignment with district priorities. Once funding is secured, we move into the procurement and execution phase. This includes selecting contractors, managing construction, and overseeing project completion, all while adhering to budget and timeline goals. Finally, we conduct a post-project evaluation to assess the effectiveness of completed projects. This step involves gathering feedback, measuring outcomes against expectations, and identifying lessons learned, which inform future capital planning efforts. Slide 7 revisits the priorities we discussed earlier in the presentation. First, we aim to establish a comprehensive framework for managing growth, ensuring we've prepared for future needs. Second, our focus is on enhancing and maintaining our district's infrastructure to support a high-quality learning environment. Finally, we strive to optimize resource allocation and promote sustainable development, ensuring efficient and responsible use of resources. These priorities are central to our capital planning and infrastructure development. Slides 8 and 9 highlight our commitment to aligning the School District of Lee County's facilities and infrastructure with the evolving needs of our students and community. We adhere to a structured timeline for reviewing and updating our capital plan. This disciplined approach enables proactive planning, timely enhancements, and the flexibility to adapt to changes. By maintaining this review cycle, we ensure a forward-thinking strategy that addresses both current and future demands. Slide 9 outlines our structured approach to capital plan reviews and the critical role of consistent communication with the school board. We conduct an annual review that includes a comprehensive needs assessment to evaluate facility demands, project evaluations to ensure alignment with strategic goals, and budget reviews to monitor financial performance and address variances. Every 6 months, we perform detailed biannual updates, which encompass feasibility studies to assess the viability of new projects and long-term planning to adjust strategies based on the evolving needs and external factors. A comprehensive review is undertaken every 5 years, focusing on strategic visioning to refine long-term objectives and community engagement to incorporate broad-based stakeholder input into the capital plan. Additionally, we employ continuous monitoring through regular project tracking and feedback loops. These feedback loops are vital in enhancing the integrity of the capital plan as they ensure that input from internal and external stakeholders is systematically incorporated. This ongoing dialogue helps identify potential issues early, fosters responsiveness to changing circumstances, and ensures that the plan remains relevant and effective. Consistent communication with the school board is paramount. Regular updates and detailed reports based on these review processes ensure transparency, facilitate informed decision-making, and align the capital plan with the board's strategic objectives, thereby supporting effective governance and planning. To effectively support the strategic goals of the School District of Lee County, we take a comprehensive approach to determining the resources required for our capital plan. This approach ensures that we secure the necessary funding, expertise, and materials to carry out our projects efficiently and sustainably, tailored to the unique needs and priorities of our Lee County community. Slide 11 outlines our approach to funding sources and strategic planning for the School District of Lee County. To support our initiatives, we utilize a range of funding sources, including local funding from taxes, state and federal grants, and public-private partnerships. These diverse sources help us secure the necessary resources for our projects. Our financial planning includes careful budget allocation to direct funds to priority areas, detailed cost estimates to manage expenditures effectively, and reserve funds to address unforeseen expenses and ensure financial stability. We also focus on human resources by assigning dedicated project management teams to oversee initiatives and providing ongoing training to enhance their skills and effectiveness. Strategic planning involves regular needs assessments to identify current and future requirements, data-driven decision-making to ensure our strategies are based on accurate information, and stakeholder engagement to align our plans with community needs and priorities. Additionally, we collaborate closely with internal and external stakeholders, ensuring that our planning and resource allocation align with district-wide goals and facilitate informed decision-making. This comprehensive approach ensures that we manage resources effectively, plan strategically, and execute projects efficiently, supporting the School District of Lee County's commitment to excellence and sustainability. This concludes our presentation. We now invite the board and superintendent to share their comments and feedback.
Thank you. Dr. Cupid-McCoy, do you have anything to add?
No, ma'am, not at this time.
All right, thank you. Board members, any comments or questions? Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Ross, and thank you, Dr. Malloy. I was the one that actually had asked for a presentation like this, and I wanted to actually have a bit of a board discussion because there's a couple things that coming up. For example, I mean, and you know, I know Dr. Malloy's talked about it, the absolute increase of students in the East Zone. I know, I believe at one point you had said over a span of 2 weeks, was it 700 kids or students at one point? Is that correct, or approximately?
Yeah, we have since increased that number since we measured growth at the end of school year with new students coming in at the beginning of this year.
Okay, and you know, one of the issues I have is we're not getting any kind of school out there for at least 4 years, so we're ways out. And kind of talking about the board with different solutions, obviously we talk about revenue. A couple of things I know we've talked about is, I mean, is there any justification on expanding campuses? Obviously, you know, one like Riverdale, there was a lot of issues because of infrastructure, but maybe other schools. Is that a philosophy we need to look at? Another thing I had, you know, I brought up, I sent the board this last time is, for example, one of the models in Polk County is a public-private partnership, but it's actually essentially a lease back for 20 years, and after 20 years, the school district gets the building at that point. Is it ideal that you essentially rent a building at that point? No, but on the other hand, you know, it's different than putting up $150 million up front and trying to build the 10 schools in 10 years. So I kind of wanted to see what the board perspective. I mean, the other thing I know we've talked about, I also have concerns about is the existing infrastructure of many of our schools. I know we had talked about, you know, are hitting some of their I don't want to say life expectancy, but I guess, in terms of where they're at for certain conditions throughout the entire district. So I kind of wanted to see what the board's feedback and thoughts, because this is a ever-increasing problem I'm concerned about.
Board comments, follow-up comments? Mr. Persons, then Ms. Morgan, then Ms. Patrica, I haven't forgot about you.
Yeah. I agree with what Mr. Fisher said. We need to look into some innovative solutions. And the private-public partnership is definitely one that probably we need to explore a little bit more. And that's not my area of expertise, so I can't say much more than that, other than it seems to be working from when I've talked to the people in the Polk County. One thing I was wondering about is it would be probably good for the board to get updates on how many new students on a regular basis. I mean, I saw the lines last week outside of the people trying to register for school during the first week of school. I mean, it looked like there could have been easily a couple hundred do that. I'm not sure, but I would like to see that because the growth is there. And probably updates for the public I keep getting. I mean, like on the NNN, I get a lot of questions. Where are you? Where are you? And it just says design phase. Maybe we need to bring it forward a little bit more and say where we are rather than wait till it's finally done and then present it, because then the public says, well, I didn't know. So I think probably, I know we've been briefed a little bit of where we are, but somewhere on the line, I think maybe we need to let the public know. But we aren't finished with the design phase. I want to make that clear. But how it's moving and what we're looking at there.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, if I may on that, if you can remember, we are re-implementing our construction update. So Scott and his team will be coming, I believe the first one will be next month, for a construction update. And at that time, they will be going down their list of projects and, being able to dig in and obviously opportunity to ask questions about specific projects. So that is a way we're re-implementing to be able to communicate to the board and to the public the status of projects.
Good. Thank you. I mean, I sort of knew that. I just sort of wanted to go on record. Is that what we're doing? Thank you.
Ms. Morgan.
So in line with the comments that have been made about board expertise and public engagement and using other vehicles for development, on slides 9 and 11, slide 9, you refer to a comprehensive review every 5 years, which involves strategic visioning with community engagement. And then on slide 11, you refer to strategic planning and talk about stakeholder engagement. When was the last time we had a comprehensive review that engaged the public?
Our public engagement in regards to the capital plan would be through our construction advisory committee. That is presented and received feedback from that as well. So that would be the primary public engagement, as well as presenting to this board and allowing public comment during that time as well.
Well, just from my brief tenure on construction advisory, I would say that there is for the participants a vested interest in doing things the same way. And so I don't think that if we're going to talk about comprehensive reviews and engaging the public, that qualifies. I think we really need to be bringing in the kind of expertise. We as a board need to hear from stakeholders who have expertise in the area of this kind of development to help us with this conversation, because we don't have it, and I don't think we're going to get it from our construction advisory committee. And in the strategic planning, we haven't talked about it at all. So anyway, those are my comments. But I'm very concerned that we're behind the 8 ball and we're not engaging. And so there you go. Thank you.
Ms. Patrica, do you have anything at this time?
Yeah, I do agree with some of the things that have been said, Mr. Fisher, with regard to public-private partnerships and other ways to fund potential expansions. I also know that where we sit at that board table, saying things like that is kind of easy as opposed to implementing them. So for example, Pinewoods Elementary School right in my backyard, would we love to be able to expand it? Yes, but from what I understand, the land upon which that school sits does not accommodate an expansion. So we can talk about those things and we can ask staff to prioritize them or implement them, but sometimes there are things standing in the way of implementation, if that makes sense. And the other thing to follow up on Mr. Fisher's comments is a board discussion is great, but how do we actually direct staff to make these changes? I don't want this to just sort of dangle out there and not be taken seriously. So that would be the question I'd throw back to all of you, if you wouldn't mind. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Patrica. While you were saying exactly that, I thought the exact same thing, as far as it's one thing for us to have these conversations, but then to act upon them is another thing. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Ms. Morgan, you were talking about community engagement. You know, we had that meeting when post-hurricane, and I thought it was such a productive meeting with the Fort Myers Beach community. Mm-hmm. And we went to their community and we listened to what their community had to say about the Fort Myers Beach School. Now, while I know that was a renovation project, whether we were going to keep it, not keep it, what we were going to do there is one thing, but I don't know why we can't, as a board, do something more along those lines throughout the community. You know, going out east, having somewhat of a town hall. I know that the former superintendent had a town hall about just getting to know what the community needs were and those kind of discussions with transportation and student enrollment. But why can't we do a town hall in our zones or our areas, especially those that are growing so rapidly, and keep the focus on what the community can do as far as building a new school, renovating, because I think we have so many talented and gifted individuals in our entire county, not to mention so many resources. And I've said this on the dais before, people don't know how to help because they don't know that we need the help. So they have I can help you. I had no idea that you were having such and such issues. I can help you with that. So I think it would be a great start to be able to have this, not kick this can down the road, but to start having these conversations with our community, because I want our board to be approachable. I want the community to be able to feel like they don't have to come here for 3 minutes at public comment, but we will come to them and have these conversations, be it hard or easy, but at least start to have those conversations with the stakeholders. And then as far as one of the things Mr. Fisher brought up, I love the idea of lease back. I like I'm always about thinking outside the box and not doing things the same way all the time. But you brought up a really good point, because we have a lot of schools that that haven't been touched in we've been putting Band-Aids on them, right? You know, whether it be air conditioning, HVAC, or moldy carpet, or whatever the case may be. So that I'm fearful for, and I'm also fearful for not just the dollar sign on some of these schools, but what if there is a time that our growth slows down significantly or ceases altogether? And I'd hate for the district to ever be, whether I'm on this board or 20, 30 years down the road, I'd hate for the school district to be in a position where now we're closing schools. So, I mean, while we look at this list, what page was that? Yeah, on slide 6 of all of these potential school builds, I would hate to see us go a little too far out of reach. So maybe that's something we can't, and if we have these conversations with community, I'm sorry, I'm rattling on. If we have these conversations with our community and with our stakeholders, maybe we can brainstorm and hear some great ideas from those out there. Is there any follow-up on, I'm happy to keep this conversation going. Ms. Morgan?
My bad. Maybe we need an ad hoc committee to the board, someone to, put together a group of community people to make sure we have somebody representing each of the areas who can come and give the board enough information to go out and ask meaningful questions in the community when we go out, not just to say, can we expand your school or not expand your school, or how would you feel about this or that, but to give us something with some real content to go out and talk to people about. I just feel like we don't have the internal expertise and we don't have expertise here. And I think we to be proactive, we need to bring people in who have the experience, who can work with us on it. And maybe an ad hoc committee is one way to do it. Thank you.
Mr. Persons, and then Mr. Fisher.
Well, we don't really need to invent the wheel. I mean, like the P3 it was done in Polk County, and I think our staff should definitely go up there and meet with them and see how it was done and how it worked and come back and report to us. I don't think we need to go to Polk County,
Right.
even though I've talked to some of them. One of the things I like to see more of is, we get these reports, but the public, it's very difficult for them to go through everything and find them. For instance, the budget, people say, I'd like to be able to click on the budget and then click on a school and see what they're spending money for. In this day and age of computers, I'd like to see more of that. Same thing on the capital plan. It'd be nice if we had something on our website that said capital plan, and they could go to it and they could click on a certain school to see where they are at any particular time. I don't know if that's a possibility or not, but I know the public, and I think we would get a lot more input if they could get information. Because, I could see the public coming now and really not knowing. We could have the whole thing out here of what it's enough information to give us their input in a meaningful way. Because, I get emails all the time that make no sense because they just don't have the facts.
Yeah.
But they want to be involved and they want to be engaged. So I think we need to get the facts out there to the public more. And then I think the town halls would be an excellent thing. I know I'm working right now on getting an office out in Lehigh. Won't cost the district anything, but I'm pretty sure that's going to be a done deal where I can meet with constituents out there rather than say, come in here 20 miles and meet with us, And maybe we could do more of that in all the different zones.
So just a quick question.
Yes.
So the sales tax is out there. You're talking about doing something just like the sales tax, but for all of the capital dollars and for the budget? Is that essentially where you're going?
I'm sure you've had sayings, I'd like to see the budget. Well, the budget we get is 300 pages or something. I don't know. The full budget, I don't know how many pages exactly, but it's thick.
A breakdown.
And what's online or they can get is a very generalized budget, and that doesn't really tell you enough. We're spending, 1.5 on capital, but then where does it get broken down into how many schools and how many years and everything? I just would like to see the information be more available to the public, because they're not going to come here and sit in a workshop like we are and be exposed to this. And it would be nice if they had a little more information. I think that would go a long ways. But other than that, I mean, that's sort of where I was going at, whether it's the sales tax, how they break it down. I'll let the departments figure that out.
I was just thinking more about the way it's portrayed, to make it easy for the public
Right,
to access.
yeah, I mean, they could come up with numerous, I don't have a set way of doing that. Just would like to see it out there.
Mr. Fisher?
Thank you, and thank you everyone for the comments on this. And yeah, I don't comport to be any kind of expert up here. I just want to see what my fellow board members felt, and I want this kind of be of a spark. I know nothing is going to necessarily, we're not coming out of this meeting with direction of to do X, Y, and Z. Like, I appreciate the part from Ms. Morgan talking about the community input. I think that'd be very helpful in, you know, doing the town halls and ad hoc. I just want to see, as I said, and referring back to Ms. Morgan, I agree. I'm not trying to blame anyone, but we're behind the 8 ball right now, and I look at the numbers and the years, and it worries me. And that's why I wanted to bring up this conversation. Just wanted to see what the rest of the board, or Ms. Patrica, you know, as I said, expansion, I put that out there. You know, I said, I know we have to look at things very specifically based on the school and how old it is and what the land, the community. I'm not just saying go around and expand everywhere. I'm just looking at other ways to use the revenue to try to fix some of these issues that we have coming up in regards to our population increases throughout. Dr. Malloy?
Thank you. I did want to address just a few comments as it relates to community engagement. If you think about last year with those 4 capital plan presentations, and then with the latest being, I believe, June 26th of this past summer, that really solidified. In terms of community engagement, we are very focused on getting out there and starting with those top projects, and, you know, starting with one, engaging with the community. You know, we've gone out to Alva, we've gone out to Bonita Springs Elementary. We have Hector Cafarata family planned in just a few weeks in September. We're working with Cypress Lake Middle on their projects. It's when the, you know, it's the timing of when that community is engaged and how that community is engaged that's extremely important. In a previous role, yes, conversations are great, but when do you want to have those conversations and how? We went from kind of visioning exercises with community, like it's not going to happen, to actually drawing out, you know, pictures of the building with students at Franklin Park. So there's different engagement touch points that are extremely important with the community, and I do think that that's necessary. And I do think as we get moving on the capital plan, you'll see more and more of those community touch points that we're adding in with the capital plan. Now, on the capacity side, you are accurate in that we are facing a capacity stress, and this is this is somewhat a consistent trend with the school district of Lee County, especially having grown up here and, you know, been at the schools and seeing how they've grown from 52,000 in 1999 to 90,000 now, traditional K-12. It's dynamic. Our growth this past summer surpassed our average of over 1,300. We were up close to 1,700 last week. We are feeling capacity stress at a large majority of our schools. All options are on the table in terms of how to address them, but that has to be done with both internal and with governance team expertise as it relates to how we triage and allocate capital resources to specifically address capacity stress. And I think that that's extremely important. There's so many different layers to it. You can't just say, well, add portables here, or set up a portable site here, or build a permanent expansion here. You have to have a methodology in terms of how you're directly going to attack it. And I think by adding new seats, right? When you see 28 and you see those thousands of seats coming online, yes, it does appear like that will assist, but currently, right? Where are we currently, and what can we do right now to address that capacity stress? And working with our team in budget and HR to how we can best support schools. What are those strategies that we can do? Can we redeploy and allocate, portable resources that are being unused in some areas? How fast can we get them to those schools, levels, regions that are in need? So that's certainly top of mind, and it's something daily that we look at. And those pathways are things that we're moving forward with, each and every day. And then the creative approaches too. Those are conversations in terms of speed and timing, right? When you see those hard time frames, if you see permitting with Army Corps at 2 years, right? That's such a hard time frame, right? Because if we needed growth 2 years ago and now we have to wait 2+ construction, that's a concern. So any sort of creative or innovative pathway are things that we're exploring.
Thank you. Mr. Persons?
Are we looking at the possibility of any of these new schools sort of being designed so they could be expanded on? I mean, looking ahead that we might have to, I mean, even though a 2,800 high school will maybe, I don't know what you have to do to be able to put a whole nother floor on there and make it a 3,800 high school. I just don't know if we're thinking ahead or we're just going to just stay at a certain size. I know, and that's difficult, and I know it would be more expensive, but
And I don't want
that's one of our largest ones, so I'm really not suggesting we go to 3,800.
And I don't want to
There are a lot
speak
of
for Mr. Rickenbacker, but yes, so those new school builds do have not only room for temporary expansion, but also permanent expansion.
Okay. We'll make sure we're looking into that. Thank you.
Ms. Patrica, do you have anything further?
No, I mean, I hear us talking about public engagement, and I know that Dr. Malloy does a fabulous job of getting out into the community, but I think that Ms. Morgan can probably attest to what her experience has been and what my experience has been when a new school is becoming a reality, meaning we are about to put shovels in the ground. That's when the public sort of sits up and takes notice. And that's when it gets frustrating, because like Mr. Persons said, we've been having these meetings all along, and we now know that Dr. Malloy and his staff have been engaging the community all along, but that reach is not where I'd like to see it be, if I'm making any sense at all. The average parent at the school, they're working, both parents are working, perhaps more than one job. They don't have time to get out to these preliminary meetings, and it's almost as if it's too late by the time it comes to their attention and they start to engage. I felt like we were headed in the right direction with Chief Gomez. That position has been eliminated, so I feel like we need to find that fix. We need to find a way to engage the community, not just on capital issues, but on all issues associated with the operations of the school district at an earlier stage. So I guess I'm just sort of reinforcing what I've heard y'all say on this topic this afternoon. Those are my comments. Thanks so much.
Any more follow-up comments or questions? Okay. All right, thank you. I'm going to move on to the agenda review. It doesn't appear as though we have any agenda review questions, but I'm going to ask anyway. Okay.
Madam Chair, we do have one.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
J1, approval of personnel recommendations. The question is, are these new hires or promotions? There are 5 administrative appointments, and they're all promotions of district staff. So the following individuals: Jill Cunningham, currently a dean at Ray V, will be moving to Early Childhood Learning Services as an assistant principal. Mary Ellen Cedeno, a dean at Edison Park, will become an assistant principal at Edgewood Academy. Timothy Doherty, a former teacher at Estero, will become an assistant principal at Estero High. Matthew Wilkie, teacher at Skyline Elementary, will become assistant principal at Skyline Elementary. And Yelenis Ochoa, a teacher at DJJ, will become assistant principal at Veterans Park Academy. Of course, all pending board approval at the action meeting later this afternoon.
Okay, thank you. Any follow-up? Ms. Morgan?
Yeah. I was the one who asked the question, and the reason I asked it, and I have spoken with Ms. Monmorano, the item used to say where the person came from and whether it was a promotion or a transfer. I write notes to all these people when they get promoted or whatever. I didn't know whether HR had done an awesome job and found all of these new people to come into the district, or whether they were people who had been here and were internally promoted or moved. So all I'm asking is that we go back to the old way of saying, if it's an internal transfer and promotion, so that I have the ability to communicate with the person about what has taken place. So that was why I asked the question. I had asked the superintendent before to take care of it, and I don't think he understood what I was asking, so I brought it up again. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Next is public comment. Attorney DePay Bruno, please address public comment.
Madam Chair, we do not have anyone signed up for public comment.
All right, we will move on to good of the order. Board members, do you have any comments? And I will start with Ms. Patrica.
Thank you. I am going to give my comments when I'm back in person, and that goes for this evening's meeting as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Morgan.
I have no comments.
Since
I have none at this time. Thank you.
Mr. Fisher.
Thank you. Just wanted to thank everyone briefly for having the capital plan discussion. As I said, we talk about having more discussions in the dais, and I just, as I said, really appreciate and wanted to kind of see where everyone was at. So besides that, I'll leave the rest of my comments for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will leave mine for this evening. Attorney DePay Bruno.
I have none, thank you.
Dr. Cupid McCoy.
And I too have none. Thank you.
Thank you. Tonight, we are going to have a board meeting, a board action meeting at 6 p.m. At this point, having no other business to come before this body and seeing no objection, this meeting is adjourned. The time is 2:51 p.m.